Hey, what's up, YouTube? This your boy Barlo-B-Theorizing, and welcome back to the Barlow Zone, home with the demon hunter King Kaido himself sent to Azeroth. How's everybody doing today? I hope y'all are having a fantastic day like myself. You might notice I cleaned it up a little bit, I don't know, give it a try. Never really go full shave, but try to look nice. Anyway, I want to start this one out by saying big shout out. I've felt the love and I want y'all to know how much I appreciate you guys. Not going to save it till the end this time. Coming up on almost 100 views on the I believe it was the Rocks video. Then already 50 views on the video I released on the 25th. That's amazing to me. It's a small thing. Definitely, I'm not one of the big time creators. I'm not a big channel. I'm not putting incredible production value. So I really appreciate y'all that are sticking around and listening to what I have to say because that's really all I'm bringing to the table. I'm just here putting it out there, letting y'all know what I've been thinking. And man, I don't even know if I've known 100 people personally by name in my life. So I have so much love and appreciation in my heart for y'all. I want y'all to know that. But I wanted to do this one. We're gonna talk One Piece again. There's a something I call it a theory. It's maybe not something that's a traditional format theory or whatever, but it's something I've been saying for a long time, and I don't know. I guess I'm over typing it in comments. I want to go ahead and put my feelings out there on this subject. So today I'd like to talk about some of the villains or bad guys of One Piece because Oda, I don't know, it's not really a secret, but Oda is a fantastic writer in my opinion. Could the story have ended by now? Almost certainly. Would it have been as thrilling of a ride? Maybe. But I do know, and I have faith in Oda Sensei, that whatever story he is trying to tell is going to be worth the ride. Whatever the One Piece ends up being is going to be worth all this hassle, all this struggle, all the conflict that we as fans and the Straw Hat crew go through. Everything's going to be worth it at the end of the day. But everybody likes to talk about the Straw Hats. They're an amazing group of people, led by probably my second favorite anime main character of all time. And, number one slot to anybody who knows me goes to my boy Natsu, the pink haired, fire breathing demon dragon himself. I Fairy Tale wasn't amazingly written, but Natsu, I love that guy. And I feel like him and Luffy would probably get along. They're just happy, go lucky. Again, hey, there's that neighbor I was telling y'all about last time. But they're both real happy go lucky, right? It's try not to stress over the little stuff. We'll just protect the people we love. And, you know, being a Native American with the spirit animal of a bear, that really resonates with me because that's what I'm all about. It's not about going out of your way to grief somebody else's day, tear apart somebody's idea or dream. For me, it's just putting it out there, putting it all on the line, not being afraid to voice what my opinion is, regardless of what some other people may be thinking. I'm probably not going to edit that out. I'm sorry. Like I said in the last video, don't script these, so don't really know where I was leaving off when that all started. I'll just put an apology up there. I can't control my neighbors. I hope y'all are, willing to give me a pass on that if it happens occasionally. But there are two specific bad guys. You guys might notice I keep doing that I wanted to talk about because, you know, people like Dofi or Katakuri or Kaido, King Kaido himself. A lot of people like to show these characters love, right? A lot of people like to talk about and theorize the possibility of them coming back in a better position than they were first pitched in. And I really like it. All three of them were solid characters. I get why people really like them. And again, anybody that knows me knows that King Kaido is my number one when it comes to One Piece. They're just, Kuma's right there behind him. That backstory on Egghead. I don't cry very often when I'm reading, but man, Kuma and Loki's backstories have just, they hit on a whole other level. But Kaido's my favorite, so I'm always there for the conversations about him coming back. Dofi was a really cool and interesting character, and Katakuri, he was a bad guy in name alone. Whole Cake Island was a weird time. I don't look at Katakuri through the lens of him being a villain. It's like more like Rayleigh, I guess, to me, where it was just a stop, something Luffy needed to learn about. And he did a great job in his role. But the two I want to talk about are Marshall D. Teach, aka Blackbeard, and Akainu Sakazuki, whichever one you decide to call him. Because I don't feel like people really talk about them enough. It's always bad this, Blackbeard, final bad guy that, Sakazuki, unforgivable, destroyed Ohara. And, I always preface this when I do comment it, that I understand why people are haters. Sakazuki obviously is almost single-handedly personally responsible. Admittedly, he was under orders, but he did give the call to Buster O'Hara, so he is essentially single-handedly responsible for kicking off the devastation that was Robin's backstory and Robin's life, right? And that's real bad because Robin's a Nakama. She's part of our crew. She's somebody we love and want to protect. Man, she's probably the one crew member, like, she got power to protect herself, but I have no doubt everybody on that crew would lay down their life in a heartbeat for Robin. Like, Water 7 was something incredible. Enies Lobby, the whole Water 7 saga was just absolutely incredible. I don't want to say peak One Piece. It was the time that I started reading weekly, so maybe that skews in my mind a bit. But Sakazuki, definitely a bad dude, right? At least that's what the story wants you to think. Because I've noticed a few things that I've found interesting that kind of point towards the potential. I'm not saying it's likely. Definitely accept that while it is a theory of mine, which means I have spent some time considering it against canonical events. I accept that at any moment a chapter could drop that absolutely nukes this in a single panel and turns it from theory to fan fiction. But there are a few things I've noticed concerning Sakazuki's story that give me reason to pause on calling him a bad guy and hope at a redemption arc. First, the battle between him and Aokiji on Punk Hazard. we never really got to see what went down. We just kind of knew the aftermath. You know, Sakazuki got the promotion to Fleet Admiral. Aokiji decided to leave after Sakazuki burnt his leg off. But for the most part, they were pretty evenly matched up till that point. And it comes down to Aokiji as like what the first step in me seeing something more in Akainu's arc, right? Because Aokiji introduced the idea of a Marine Admiral not just defecting, because he certainly did. He stopped being a part of the Marines and he became a pirate. But he also introduced the idea of an admiral coming to the realization that, oh, you know what? Maybe I'm fighting on the wrong side of this. And that's all Aokiji, right? That very little, like, on the periphery is the best connection Akainu has to that part, right? They were both admirals at the same time. The second part, I guess second and third part, because for me it comes down to a three-parter for now. The second and third thing that happened both occurred during Egghead. I suppose I feel a little more comfortable putting this on video because Egghead is wrapping up in the anime from my understanding, so I don't watch the anime. It's not my preferred method of consuming the content, but I didn't want to make something that could potentially ruin upcoming story thread for people who do only watch the anime. But the next 2 points concern the other admiral, Kizaru. You know, I don't know, would he be Cheech or would he be Chong, right? But you know, during the fight with Saturn, Luffy went Gear 5th, you know, things were looking good. But then Luffy got bopped, went down. Like, it looked like he was down for the count. Dude even went full old man face, stretched out. So I have no idea how that looked. I hope it wasn't too goofy, but if it was, for y'all. But during that, somebody fed Luffy. Somebody who knew what food would do for Luffy in that situation, right? And if you go back and take a look at the panels, there's not really anybody else there to bring that food to Luffy. Now, before I elaborate and go into what my view on this, I do want to start by saying that Sanji was in the relative vicinity of where Bonnie was, and at this moment Bonnie was the primary target of Saturn. You know, he was holding her up like, Marines, take aim, get ready to focus fire. Sanji had left the little advanced vehicle with the satellites and Frankie and all them because he got that sense that Bonnie was in trouble. So he was kind of in the vicinity. I believe, though, at that point he was either distracted or taken out. No matter how you cut it, try to explain that Sanji was the one. Kizaru was known to be present in the same area as Luffy and Saturn at the same time, and curiously, right after we got the panel of, I believe I got it right here, right after we got the panel of Luffy chowing down, right, just nom 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 nom. 2 panels later, we got this, which, not confirmation, that's why just theory for now, seems pretty reliable that Oda's trying to allude to Kizaru having something to do about it. Or it could just be a classic Oda feint where he puts something on panel that turns out to be somebody off panel did it. That's why I wanted to pitch the idea that I do know Sanji was in the time frame, could be present in the vicinity, but to me it was Kizaru, especially with how he acted once everything was said and done. Took out Vegapunk, bam, landed, just landed on his back. All the Marines are all, Admiral, get up, we're not done fighting. He's I've done my job, just let me rest. That was the words of an exasperated man. Somebody who was pushed to their limits, forced to do something they didn't want to do. Which I bring up because, sorry, I hope that doesn't affect the volume too much. I just noticed I bumped it earlier. It just also supports the notion that an admiral can start to question whether or not they're on the right side, whether or not they're fighting for the team they actually want to be fighting for. Which brings me to point number 3, because during this same time frame, it may not have been exactly when Kizaru was feeding Luffy. I'll make sure I make it clear that's my theory, no confirmation. But during this same time, Akainu was also faced with Kuma on the Red Line, tasked with stopping him and killing him because he had become a threat to the Marines. But what did Akainu do? He threw that same punch that clipped Whitebeard. Admittedly, he did some damage to Whitebeard just like he did to Kuma. But the point is, he threw that same punch that he already knew would not be effective enough to do the job he was tasked with doing, which gave Kuma the fraction of a second to step past Kizaru and paw himself out of there. Akainu pulled that punch. He did not throw an effective punch for the job put in front of him. Especially considering, being the fleet admiral, he'd have the information on how strong Kuma is and would understand this has to be a one-shot moment. It's Oko or nothing. Oko or no go. Sorry. Been watching a lot of the DCAU. Etrigan's my dude, so forgive me for the rhyme. So, because of these factors, though, I have found myself leaning away from Sakazuki being the bad guy. He's still done some awful stuff. He killed Ace. He is responsible for Ohara. He's been leading the admirals in this unjust charge against the world. He definitely needs comeuppance, but for whatever reason, Oda has left the tiniest glimmer of hope that Akainu, sorry, I was deciding Sakazuki or Akainu. I go back and forth, as you guys I'm sure have noticed. But Oda's left this little sliver of hope that he can be saved, which we know that's all Luffy needs. That's all Nika needs, right? So Sakazuki may not be as bad as a lot of people believe him to be. And the second person I want to talk about, like I said at the beginning, is Blackbeard. First thing that comes to mind might be, Aokiji's on that squad now, which is one of my points. It's not the first point by far. After I started reading, I did a lot of catch-up reading, obviously. Man, we were a few hundred chapters in already by 2009. So I had a lot of stuff to catch up on, right? And I noticed, obviously, Oda drew and wrote Blackbeard as an antithesis of Luffy, right? This is very deliberate. It's non-negotiable. It's a fact of life, basically, in One Piece, is that Marshall D. Teach is the antithesis of Luffy. And for that reason, I understand why everybody's all, oh no, Blackbeard's the big bad guy, he's the final boss. And that that could still be. I will try to remember to pitch the idea that I have. It's part of the theory, so I'm sure it'll come up. But I do still, even though I don't think of Blackbeard as a bad guy, I do still see him as the final fight. Not really the final boss, mind you, but the final fight of One Piece. But to Aokiji, the point about Aokiji joining that really got me is the fact that Teach didn't force him. He was given the option. There wasn't a Davy back for it. It was Aokiji was fighting, messing up the crew, and Teach came up like, hey, you know what? Turns out you're actually really strong. I noticed you're not affiliated with the Marines anymore. How about you roll with me? And there was the back and forth because Aokiji does still. At this point, we learned that even though he's no longer a Marine, he still subscribes to his brand of justice, which is why him making the decision to join Blackbeard's crew really ignited the embers that had been just roiling in the background, right? Because antithesis doesn't mean bad guy when we're talking about the main character of a story, right? Like, obviously Luffy is the good guy, quote unquote. I see Luffy as a good guy. Let me be clear. I'm not saying that I think Luffy is a bad guy. I'm just saying perspective is a lie. From a lot of the world's eyes, Luffy is a bad guy. But we as readers know he's not. He's the hero of the story. He's going to make everything better eventually, right? Being the antithesis of that doesn't necessarily mean you're evil, is my point, right? Just because, what was it? Luffy hated the pie and Blackbeard loved it. Luffy loved the juice, Blackbeard hated it. That's more establishing. Blackbeard likes different things than Luffy. Like, if Luffy likes it, odds are Blackbeard's not. Which I've seen, just to throw out, I've seen used in arguments against the people trying to theorize that Loki's going to join Blackbeard's crew. I'm not going to get into that. The whole rocks angle might actually, you know what? I'm gonna simmer on that while we're talking, but the rocks angle might come up. But because Blackbeard's only been painted as an antithesis, not evil. Because if we look at what Blackbeard's been doing, like, yes, he is a big reason, a big proponent in why Ace is dead, right? Other than that single action, which I do want to make clear, was Blackbeard was on the hunt for Luffy, not Ace. He just happened to run into Ace first. Ace was always running his mouth about how proud he was of his little brother Luffy. So Blackbeard saw an opportunity to bait Luffy out and captured Ace, brought him to Marineford, and it worked. Which ended up resulting in Teach taking his second devil fruit after OG Pops himself, Father of the Century, my man's Whitebeard, Edward Newgate, Pops, man, so many nicknames for him I hear and see. I love every one of them. Whitebeard was an amazing character. I love that man till the end of days. So Teach isn't free and clear. He isn't innocent. But if we really look at what he's done, nothing except for trying to find Luffy, which wasn't even an act against Luffy. His hunt for Luffy was to bring somebody in that would force the Marines to take him seriously and allow him to become a warlord of the sea, which was a step in that he needed to accomplish in attaining whatever his dream is, because he wanted to recruit a bunch of the big old strong inmates from Impel Down. So he needed a way in. Being a warlord gave him that. So really, the attempted capture of Luffy and subsequent actual capture of Ace wasn't necessarily maliciously against Luffy. And when I had that realization, I realized nothing Blackbeard has actually done in the story up till this point has been a malicious act against Luffy and the crew. Sometimes Luffy gets caught up in what he's doing because it's not unreasonable to think they're both chasing the same thing. I don't think they are, but it's not unreasonable for somebody to think that. Then we get to Elbaf and this introduction of the idea of Nika the Destroyer. Turns out not everybody who knew about Nika or knows about Nika sees him as this god savior figure. Some people see him as a god of destruction. And that kind of tracks with some of the silhouettes and glimpses we've been given of Nika, right? The sword and spear, the spear and shield, sword and shield. Nika's carried a lot of weapons that could wreak mass destruction in the hands of the right person. So, and I think to bring it back around, because I do want to touch on the Rox angle just a bit, because Rox, so far in his backstory, has almost been painted like a Nika-like figure in his time. Yeah, he was doing bad things. He was messing with the world government, being a menace, messing with pirates, Davy Back and crews to take their strongest tools off the ship. Like he was being a public nuisance, right? But it was all, so far from what we know, it was all in an effort to affect real change, which is all the idea of Nika is. Somebody stepping up and taking charge to affect real change. And with him being established as the father of Blackbeard, now we don't really have much more context beyond that. Rox could be one of the theorized three souls in Blackbeard. Blackbeard could be a clone. Blackbeard could be the actual kid. There are still a lot of angles for this father of Blackbeard thing to be taken. So let's try not to get ahead of ourselves there, but take what we have been given and use that to try to come to an understanding of, what might be to come or what has already been told. And the fact that in the same chapter we get all this Rox backstory, which does a very good job of establishing Rox D. Zebek in more of a Nika position than an evil position. We also got the confirmation that Rox is Blackbeard's father. I think all I want to ask, I'm not asking anybody to buy into my theory. I'm not asking anybody to start loving Sakazuki and Blackbeard. All I'm asking is don't let any of our personal headcanon, don't let a creator, don't let yourself and your fantasies and the fan fiction you like to come up with, don't let that skew what Oda has been building. Because when the reveal comes, whether any of us, myself, you, any of the other creators, whether or not any of us are right, if we allow our headcanon to affect the actual canon of the story for ourselves, that reveal, the payoff isn't going to be worth it, or might not be worth it, because it isn't going to live up to whatever you've created. So I guess the point of the video was just Not necessarily to ask anybody to take a second look at Sakazuki or take a second look at Blackbeard, but more to ask people, remember what is real in the world of One Piece when we start coming up with theories or fan fiction or when we're talking to our friends, because Oda's story could be ruined by us, and the fact that we can't keep our own wild imaginations under control. And that's not something I really want anybody to have to experience at the end of the story. Because if we keep ourselves grounded in what Oda has given us, it's less likely that whatever he's building to is going to feel disappointing, because we're not getting ahead of ourselves with our headcanon. Like, it's fun to come up with these theories, right? I have so much fun exercising my critical reasoning skills, critical thinking skills, to try and piece together stuff from this story that spanned 28 years now. But the one thing even I have to constantly remind myself of is, this is my theory, or this is my fan fiction, or this is my headcanon. And at the end of the day, anything I've theorized could be right. Everything I've theorized could be wildly wrong. I'm not going to say everything, because I have already had a couple things that I correctly predicted, whether a couple chapters ahead of time or arcs ahead of time. So, yeah, I guess if anything in this was even the slightest bit convincing, and you're willing to give Sakazuki or Blackbeard or any of the old bad guys the chance at redemption, then awesome. I would love to hear about that. But as always, I would kind of prefer to hear your thoughts on why I might be wrong, because my critical thinking skills only get me so far. I need to be challenged by the people that are listening, the people that are hearing or interacting. Let me know why you think I might be wrong, or if you think I'm onto something, help me feel the love. Give the video a like. I do try to post regularly, so feel free to hit that subscribe button if you've been liking the content you've been getting. And again, big shout out to the nearly 100 people that have watched the last couple videos. I am feeling so much love as a small creator. I really want to stress how much those views mean to me. Again, regardless of likes or comments, just that interaction means the world to me, because that's why I'm doing it. I'm not here to make money. I'm just putting my thoughts into the world to see how other people feel. Maybe there's somebody out there who was thinking the same thing, that's been scared to speak up because they feel alone. Whatever your theories or comments are, feel free to drop them in the comments, or as always, I will make sure there's a link to the Discord in the bio. And again, I try to post every day on X at Barlo-B-Theorizing, actually .b. in there in the middle, Barlo-B-Theorizing. And then the Tumblr handle is the same, Barlo-B-Theorizing, but with little hyphens, I think they're called, surrounding the B. I'll put or type those out in the bio for you as well. Sorry guys, this one's ran a little longer than I was hoping. Looks like coming up on about 34 minutes. If you've made it this far, big appreciation. I love you guys for it. And as always, I will see y'all in the next video. Much love, friends.